Good to see you again. I feel like I've been seeing a lot of you lately.
Oh my gosh. Now we can see who we're talking to.
Yeah, I think get used to this.
Yeah.
Some, a whole bunch of biscuits and a whole thing of cheese. If anyone wants cheese and crackers. It was Dr. Bird's first day back, in a couple weeks, so we were a little busy.
Maybe we can list those as incentives, cheese and crackers.
Oh, so funny when I saw that. That's a great idea.
I'll say that, I'll answer that one. Provide incentives, I'll say Karen bakes every now and then, Patty brings cheese and crackers. Sometimes bottled water.
That's right. Right, we can get bottled water.
Sometimes,
I made the ice cream the other day and it was a flop.
I'm gonna have to make some of the freezer cookies.
I don't know, I stirred it and I thought I had stirred it all and then when it froze, it was like all the sweetener was on the bottom and it wasn't separated. She
You
said
whipped all the
fold it
cream,
in.
you whipped all the cream
You
first.
told me to fold it in. Well, I made it anyway.
Yeah, I did mine. But then I folded in, though, afterwards, I folded them. And I was okay, I'm gonna find that other stuff.
Just my deodorant.
I don't wanna do that. All right, that clock says 6:30, so I'll call meeting to order and stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Right. Consent agenda is the next item. And right now we have the minutes, 5A, 6A, the civil service.
I took that out.
Took that out?
I'm sorry.
Okay. The teaching staff maternity leave extension request, long-term substitute extension, the board member conference approval, and special education.
Is 7C special ed? It looks like it's not.
7C special ed.
It looks like it's corrected
changed.
action. Yeah.
Oh, because I had, yes,
Oh,
thank
it's
you.
not
So which one are
7C.
we?
It's 7D,
7D.
7D.
D, okay, good.
7D, sorry.
Thank you.
That makes sense. Okay.
Okay, right. Does everybody want any of those items removed? If not, is there a motion to accept the consent agenda? Patty, thanks. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thanks, Joan. All, or is there discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All say no. Motion carries 5-4-0 against 2 absent. Right, work session. Is our succession planning for different administrative positions. Roger, I'm gonna let you lead this discussion.
Sure. For a long time, we've had on our strategic plan as one of our goals to quote, develop and implement a formal succession planning process for administrators, teachers, and staff for greater future preparedness. Thinking ahead about the likelihood of positions opening up and wanting to fill those positions in a way that's best for the district. A year or two ago, Leonard and I presented kind of a broad outline of some ideas that that the board could utilize when it comes to this type of planning, but they were pretty broad. And as we get to a point where we recognize that some people in key positions are reaching that retirement age, we think it's important that we get a little more specific and that the board consider the possibilities of people in key positions eventually leaving and the need to replace them. So what I tried to do is to provide you with some guidance or guidelines for 3 positions. And so we're starting with these 3, athletic director, business official, and superintendent. And then to consider some possible options for moving ahead when that time arrives. Provided you with a document, a summary of some of those ideas and some of those possibilities. This is not necessarily definitive or limiting, intended to be limiting, but to provide you with something really to work with. So how do you want to move ahead? You want to talk about each position and some possible ways of moving forward?
Yes.
Okay.
That's good.
So first position is athletic director. Now you might recall if you've been with the district for a while, or just a community member or parent along the way, that our athletic director position has changed over time for probably a number of different reasons. I'm going to have to get into that, but if you go back to that period, maybe like 2000 to 2011, we had 3 phys ed teachers. 2 were teaching full loads, and the third was part-time, teaching 2 or 3 sections of phys ed, and then the rest of the time dedicated to athletic director. So part of the teaching day directed to athletic director, as well as the additional time, lots of time being at athletic director. That changed in about 2011. We reduced the staff in the phys ed department from 3 to 2, and the athletic director position, along with the full load, was more than was probably sustainable at the time. So the district went on a search and hired an athletic director as a half-time teacher with additional duties of athletic director, kind of a unique or different approach. No specific teaching duties, although that changed over time too as different needs arose. We then moved from there to taking that same person. It was Matt Wallentuck. And when he was here, the board appointed him to the 0.6 position of alternative ed teacher. So it was 0.6, and then the remaining 0.4, if you want to look at it that way, was dedicated towards athletic director plus the additional time and duties that were associated with that. Well, Matt left, and that was rather quick. We wanted to transition into a place where we would have someone who was very knowledgeable of the position. And so Donna Moody, although she was teaching a full load and is teaching a full load of six classes a day, agreed to accept the athletic director position and essentially to do what we always said we couldn't or shouldn't do, which is to pile responsibilities of athletic director on top of the duties of a full-time teacher. She's been able to manage that probably because of her experience, her energy, and her knowledge that her time was going to be limited because, as many of you know, she was always her intent to retire. So we're looking ahead and trying to figure out how we move ahead with a position, and some of the options are to take what we have and to really just try and hire someone to replace, the present with the same position, full-time teaching, and all the athletic director duties. That would be the present structure. We could also look at the past structure where we were able to hire somebody as a part-time teacher, and then with the additional athletic director duties. And then we also could consider hiring adding an additional position, which would have half-time AD duties and half-time teaching responsibilities, very similar to what existed here in the 2001 to 2011 time period. You probably know there's always costs associated with all these, and I sort of provided you with sort of the increasing cost scenarios. So that's what I provided you with, is some guidance and ideas. I'm wondering what you all think about that.
Well, I have a question, and this may be, I mean, it kind of sounds like a silly question, but does this position have to be someone at the middle high school? I mean, can an elementary school teacher?
It certainly could be.
Maybe this is logistically.
Yeah, there's
makes
no-
sense, though.
Logistically, it's challenging.
Yeah, so,
Because the athletic program exists here.
right,
But it is possible
Yeah.
that it could be a person. They're basically, what they would end up doing is working to bill it.
right, but it kind of limits the universe of then options.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
So you're right, some logistical challenges.
okay, thanks.
I think last year there were some positions that we were looking at adding that we ended up ultimately having to cut. So I'm wondering if there's a way to, you know, if there still is a need for those positions, to tie those in, you know, at least part-time with athletic director.
Right, and I think that's, you're asking if there's still any of those positions, and yes, that hasn't changed. There's certainly great demand for the addition of a librarian, so that we could have a full-time librarian in each building. There's also continued interest in adding some teacher time to the social studies program in middle and high school. And there's also some interest in adding RTI support for math.
Currently, we pay a stipend to Donna, correct?
We pay a stipend, yes, that's right. So she earns her full salary, teaches full load, earns her
So
stipend.
it'd be a significant increase in the amount that we're paying, because you now hire a half-time person. You knock the stipend down, I would hope. But you add half-time for an athletic director. Correct?
Yes.
But the stipend is how much? The stipend,
600.
Approximately 8,000.
8,000.
Yeah.
So that's a substantial difference, putting a position in than what we're doing now. I mean, she seems to be doing a terrific job, but is it feasible to have, you know, it's kind of a unique situation, I think, with Donna. Could we expect that to continue if we continued that structure?
You know, my opinion is it's unlikely, and you know, really, I think that much of what she accomplishes because we give her a lot of credit. She works. She starts from very early.
Yeah, I guess
She
you
works
know,
at
it's
very
6 in the
late.
morning.
You
Yeah.
do, yeah. And
She's coaching also.
she coaches 3 sports, so it's really
Right.
that doesn't have to remain, of course, because we can always hire different people to coach. But it's definitely a real stretch to expect that.
And my other question, I guess, you know, looking at keeping it the same is, you know, the phys ed classes are team taught. I don't know how big they are.
Mhm.
You know, would it be possible to go to 1.5 phys ed teachers and one teacher has to handle?
Well, you'd be reducing teacher time in the phys ed program.
Right.
And one of the benefits of having 2 teachers is not just numbers, but it's also varying the activities.
Right.
And so when you give up the second teacher, you not only gain in class size, but you reduce the activities. So in many ways, you're raising really good points because you know, we're talking about positions, we're talking about money, but we're also talking about the quality of what we can expect, Jeff. And you're raising that with, you know, can we expect the same quality of oversight, you know? And Mary, you're asking that same question, you know, can we expect the same quality in the classroom and other areas? So a lot of this is trade-off kinds things, and certainly, adding time costs more and then offers the, the greater possibility of quality and opportunity.
One thing, the last time it was advertised, when the part-time athletic director was advertised and people applied for it, I know that there were people that applied for it that weren't teachers. But I noticed even with this, that it's not only that it's teacher, but it's a master's, like it's required in this description that it's master's level
Right.
teacher, so it's not someone earning their, getting to that level, they already need to be there.
That's how that job description reads, yes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and so is that, I mean, but if that's the way the job description reads, then that's, if we were to advertise, we would need to advertise for that level? Or is that flexible?
Well, any job description has to be flexible depending on who applies, right? Because you could advertise for a job with, 5 particular qualities, you get no more than 3 from any candidate, you have to figure out what you're gonna do. In this case, a typical teacher who's been teaching for more than a few years already has a master's degree, so it matches pretty evenly with what the expectations are for a somewhat experienced teacher. It doesn't have to be a well-experienced teacher, but a teacher with a few years worth of experience, because in order to maintain your license, you have to get your master's degree.
And then the position is specifically tied to teaching, because I think that also came up with the ad, and people applying is that they weren't necessarily teachers, so I think it's important that, and I think that's tied in with the position and the contract, so,
Yeah, I mean, the
So I
athletic
just think we
director
need to put
position is in the teacher's contract.
yeah,
Now,
so,
if, there is possible, and other districts do, and I did provide you with some information about other districts that have administrators in this role, and that certainly exists normally in larger districts. In order to make that change for us, we would have to have those conversations with the teachers union, but it is, that position is listed in the teacher's
yeah,
contract, yeah.
so if we, so when this gets advertised, when we post it, then we should probably include those
Yeah.
tips, so that there's not somebody who's maybe newly graduated from a program who applies because actually they need to have the master's level, or that certain number of years experience is gonna be a minimum. I just think we should include that. And I don't know how we would advertise for librarian, social studies teacher, or, like, that's gonna be hard, but I
It's a
certainly
good question.
like that idea.
I will say that in the
So-
real world, and my experience only, I can't vouch for the whole world, but I can vouch for the real world based on my experience, is that you're more likely to find someone who teaches social studies and has the qualities you want in an athletic director than a librarian.
Right,
Librarians right now are actually very, very difficult to find. It's similar to a special ed teacher, very.
would it be, but I mean, can you specifically name the subject you're looking for to go with it, or would it be, multiple certifications preferred or something like that,
Well, all those are possibilities, right? Because if you advertise for, let's say, phys ed teacher, athletic director, then you're limiting yourself to that, right? If you advertise for social studies teacher, athletic director, you're limiting yourself to that. Now, that being said, if you don't do that, you're likely to not get the right applicants, right? So the multiple, naming the 2 different kinds, I mean, there are different ways to go.
Do we have I know we have, like not substitute teachers, but, aides. Do we have like a teacher at large type position where somebody kind of fills in?
We don't.
I mean, could that be a possibility where you have somebody who's a part-time, like a 0.6 teacher and the rest athletic director? That doesn't lock you into any particular subject.
It doesn't. So, and that would be similar to, I think, what my option 3 is here, although with some flexibility, right?
So Donna's retirement is obviously public around the school. Nobody's come running to your office and say, I want to be AD. That'd be the perfect
No, that's
scenario.
true, nobody asked.
Because if an existing teacher did, then it's easier to work in that direction
Sure.
to say, how can we,
Right.
subsidize your position so you can do it rather than try to hire it.
You know, the athletic director, you've heard me mention athletics in these meetings time and again because of how central athletics are to the experience of our students, right? And so we have, every season, half of our middle and high school students are participating in athletics. We have 30-something teams, right? It's a big part. But anyone who's seen the job up close knows that it has difficult hours, sometimes very challenging responsibilities. And so, yeah, they're not usually beating down the doors for the position. And that's why it would also, I think, be less likely to find a good candidate with the full-time teaching, full-time AD. That certainly is, that's what we have, and sort of replacing what we have would be kind of a natural thing in most circumstances. Other schools also have that position defined that way. So again, these are all the considerations.
But would it be more cost effective to maybe offer a bigger stipend than we're offering right now, than to hire somebody? I think it would, even if you like upped it by 50%, from what it is now, that's still better than bringing in another position.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, would that maybe pique somebody's interest? And
Right.
How feasible is that with the contract?
Yeah, you'd have to.
yeah, well, that's the other side.
Usually nobody argues when you're going in that direction.
Right.
It's usually the other direction.
But does that set a nice precedent for us?
Right, feel that they are putting in as many hours as
Yeah, exactly.
that may be. The math RTI that you mentioned, that would be, there'd be more flexibility with that
Sure.
position,
Mhm.
correct?
Yes.
Like that could be worked around where the
Yeah.
extra help in math was needed. And would it be just an RTI position? To feel like if there's extra help needed but that type of a position,
The RTI support that we need is in the elementary school. And it would require scheduling, so a pretty firm schedule. It would have to mirror either the math classes or the times when math is taught in elementary school classes, or it would have to have separate pull-out time slots that would all work.
Right.
So it would definitely be a fixed schedule. It might not be a full-time fixed schedule, but it would be a fixed schedule.
yeah, I wasn't meaning, flexible like day to day.
Yeah.
Like that just show up and
Yeah.
now's a good time for me. I meant more that it could be structured around like whatever was, where the hours were needed for the athletic director position and then where the time was open.
Mhm.
But then it would be structured.
Which
once
is
it's
exactly
set.
how we operated with the alt ed, the shared alt ed AD job that we had. We figured out when we needed the classes, and then we worked the AD position, around that.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
I'm gonna throw this out, not that I favor it, but, that we wanna consider looking at the middle high school principals and readjusting the administrative team to do a middle high school principal and then a dean of students / athletic director.
Right, that would be similar to, I think I've shared with you, the Saranac Lake model and other school districts that have.
It seems to me a step backwards, but we have been criticized for having three principals.
Or
rather
is it a
than-
step sideways?
I don't know, I think it's a step backwards. I think the middle school kids have really benefited from having a middle school principal dedicated to them. And I think the middle school faculty has benefited from that
But
also.
does the dean of students position then kind of fill some of
Dean of
that?
students really becomes more of a disciplinary
Yeah.
position.
Yeah, I can't stress enough how much better the structure is, with the two principals in that building. I just feel like the focus is on academics. I feel like they really know the students. I really like the two principal model.
I think it's just completely shifted the culture in that building. And it may just be the people that are in it, that have done that, but a lot of it, I think, is, I think it really gave, I don't know, validation to the middle school. And so I very much like the structure. As I think that but that's just, you know, the dean of student, the focus on discipline and when we shifted to the two principal model, you know, anything that the dean of student did then would have to go in front of the principal, and there was a lot of duplicate work going on. Whereas with the two principal model, they can handle a situation from start to finish, and it's not being passed on. So.
And the dedicated middle school principal has allowed the middle school to develop the way the middle school was designed to develop. You know, so I don't think it would be a sideways. I do think it would be a backwards.
Yeah, I mean, my only experience has been this model, so,
Yeah.
you know, I don't.
We're making a change for an athletic director.
Right.
Right,
It doesn't seem.
that's true.
That being said, if you do option 3,
Which of the
Which would
attachments
be
is it?
AD
Sorry.
and
It's
RT
the,
and math,
it
or
says
AD and
succession
social
plan
studies,
2018.
What would be the easiest to recruit?
or AD and phys ed.
Which one? I missed
AD
it.
is-
So, but if you did option 3, which is basically adding a position, right?
Right.
It's adding a position. And it would either be AD and phys ed, AD in math, AD in social, AD in librarian, or possibly even AD and dean of students, but as an addition instead, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So then you go from 2 to 3
Right. No, I
people in
would-
the main
yeah,
office,
no,
right?
I
Which
wouldn't
is,
go with that at all.
there's no difference though in FTE with any
Right.
of those decisions, right?
But it seems like we need, you know, last year there was a need expressed for
Yeah.
all three of those
All 3 of
positions. I, as a former social studies teacher, I'd love to see a half-time social studies teacher added and more electives, but I just question of putting them into the schedule. You know, there's already enough, you know, there's already lots of conflicts in terms of scheduling, and it just seems like adding more single classes would add to that.
It just seems like a crazy thing to advertise for, like, social studies teacher / athletic director kind of
Yeah, I
thing. I mean, I don't know how you.
But I mean, could it be put out there, like I think that we've spoken about before, that if we put, I mean, obviously it needs to be specific enough so that people know what they're applying for.
Mhm.
But
So,
if it gets presented in a way that it shows there may be some flexibility, and then someone really has an interest in an athletic directing position, but their
Mhm.
certification is in something else, but, you know, the teachers can work outside of their certification for a certain time period, you know, I just,
Mhm.
opening it up. I mean, I think a full-time position and moving away from the stipends, especially since it involves the contract that was just settled.
the stipend will remain, it's still in the contract, that wouldn't change. And the stipend was intended to address the extra duty time that teachers spend. What,
No, not stipend in general, but for this position, does it
Yeah.
automatically come
It
with the
does,
stipend?
yeah.
So would you reduce the salary based on that?
I think we would hire someone based on their years of experience, and we would pay a salary based on where they fall in salary
Pay
scale.
a full-time salary. We hired them to be a half-time social study, I'll say half-time social studies teacher. Would
We hired them to be a half-time social studies teacher and AD, but not with the additional teaching time. That would be another, I didn't put that down here as an option, but that would be a different approach, yes.
But that could be a half-time salary and the stipend.
That would be similar to what we had in option 2 back in 11 to 15. Only at that time, the FTE was 0.5, but there were no teacher, no classes assigned to that person.
Right. So he was paid a half-time salary plus the stipend?
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right.
And then there was substituting.
Yeah, and that which happened regularly.
Right.
Yeah, not just per diem, but for long term also.
So it,
Right.
That's not a bad model either, if you can save some money on the subs, but
Well, but he was he paid to sub? He was paid a sub salary then.
really.
Yeah.
It's called triple dipping, isn't
So he was paid a part-time salary, paid the sub, and paid for athletic director. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we want to do that.
it? I'm getting ready to. sign
So the
up.
one, so the one,
Teaching license, right?
so the one full-time, we accept.
Congratulations. I think they have to give up the voice.
I resigned.
But you said that like one full-time position, so budget-wise, since we don't know what people might apply for this and since we can't. But if we were to look at it as adding one full-time
Right.
position,
That would be option 3 with some flexibility as to what that position would be.
So it would be one full-time salary plus the stipend.
Correct.
Plus a PE teacher.
Yeah,
We
plus,
would replace the
yeah, we
PE
have to
teacher
replace the
anyway,
PE teacher, right? Yeah, that's,
So we find out what's the biggest need. And hopefully it matches the most recruitable.
And then, of course, we're also getting going on the budget, so we also have to see how these things play out in the budget.
yeah, because adding this position, is that gonna cause us to have to cut another position?
It's a good question. Until we actually see it all out, we won't really know. We're getting closer though to getting some information out, so
would it be more, I'm thinking, part of the issue, I think, with the way it's set up now with Donna is the additional coaching. I mean, not only is she teaching a full load, but she's doing the athletic director job, plus she's coaching each season. So if we eliminate, and I would worry more about burnout, that a person is coming in with every intention of doing, a great job as a teacher and a great job as an athletic director and then a great job as a coach. And I think that's putting them long term. I think that's
absolutely
really-
the coaching is over the top. with
Yeah.
that. It just happened to be
Right.
what we did because of the situation we were in.
Is it more is there less likely, is it more doable if you have a full-time phys ed teacher doing the athletic director position, but not coaching?
It's not ideal.
No?
Yeah,
I'm sure not, yeah.
But down the road, maybe yes. It doesn't mean we can't do it. It just means that it's sort of, taking somebody who's new and throwing them into the fire and seeing if they can make it.
And then I guess my other question would be what Rick brought up, where we are.
So another thought is if we were to advertise for phys ed teacher, athletic director, which probably goes together more commonly.
You can
So
even
if
see
that
it in the
person-
job description.
If that person was a half-time phys ed teacher, could we then get a half-time phys ed teacher to fill in for the other classes instead of a
Possible.
full-time person? Because the half-time phys ed teacher who's gonna co-teach classes with another experienced teacher could be at an entry level. We wouldn't need the experience, so we would replace the full-time position with someone with experience who has an interest in being an athletic director. But then budget-wise,
What you're proposing is, and right now we have 1.0 FTE, that's what we have here. That's what Donna represents. The addition, replacing her and then adding a half-time AD, half-time teacher of any subject is going from 1.0 FTE to 2.0 FTE. You're proposing going from 1.0 to 1.5
yes,
and to reorganize the way that's done, which is,
yeah, only because of being able to find, as far as finding somebody to come in to do a part-time phys ed position. Because they wouldn't necessarily have to have their master's yet to start filling in.
And they ask for athletic director only, that you still have to have a master's for that.
Yeah, we could,
That-
That
and
part would-
teaching,
that part.
Well, it's in the job
person would-
description,
right.
yes,
But,
like-
but is it by contract or is that something we wrote?
something we wrote,
So that could be changed.
could be.
Okay. So if you had somebody from the community who was qualified and interested and not necessarily have the master's
Right.
in teaching, would that be an option?
It
Or
would
could
be,
an option?
it would be,
You mean someone from the community with a teacher's
but
certification?
because they would have to have a teaching license.
They have to have a teaching
Yes.
license
Yeah.
for the athletic director.
Yes.
No, for the phys ed teacher.
No, I'm just saying for the athletic director part only. This seems more like an administrative function as opposed to a teaching function.
Yeah,
No.
but the AD,
No,
it would require some negotiating, because the AD is actually in the teachers and TA contract.
Okay,
the
so it's
contract.
It came up
contractual.
last
So
time.
we do think
They
it-
could be a teacher.
I think it would be legitimate, based on the current structure and, the way the contracts read, to have a teaching assistant do that, but to have anybody outside of it, like a certified teacher or TA, that would require some negotiating, because it would certainly be, have a potential big challenge.
Where would it help? I mean, health and PT sort of
Mhm.
cross, are
Well,
they,
interestingly, right now, Mel Decker's the health teacher at Millen High School.
right,
She teaches 4 sections of health, actually multiple classes wrapped up there because there's quarters and all the things. But basically 4 sections of health and 1 section of phys ed.
okay.
So she actually does teach a section of phys ed, 6th grade phys ed. We've been doing that forever. It's a little limiting in terms of it because all of those classes are required. We've never been able to offer the kind of health collective that we've actually wanted to offer. But we haven't had the teacher time to dedicate towards it.
But Patty's suggestion, it might be a good compromise position, then it's a 0.5 position we're adding rather than a whole position.
Sure. I think that's a possibility. Everything's got its pros and cons, and the challenge might be actually finding someone who's looking for a half-time job or willing to take and keep sustainability-wise a half-time job. So that would just be a question we wouldn't know until we tried. Ready to move on?
I gave you some other options.
You did.
Yeah, we should move on.
The next one's the business official position, and I provided you with a few options in there that I think are important to talk about. And essentially, and you'll find districts in this region practicing any one of these options. We right now have a wonderful business official who is comes from the CPA world and is employed by Lake Placid Central School District as a full-time administrator. Other districts work through BOCES or some other kind of shared arrangement to have a business official that is either employed by BOCES or shared through 2 districts or something like that. Actually, I don't know of anybody who actually shares 2 districts, but I know it's been discussed. And then another option for business administrators is instead of coming out of the CPA world, to come out of the teacher school administrator world, which typically represents potentially different skills and different background. Right? So when we look ahead, and I don't know that we have to have an answer. As you said, the AD is clearly upon us, but we don't necessarily have a specific answer. But I think it's important for us to talk about these and maybe rule something in or set a clear path or possibly rule some things out. So.
The first option, seek shared position through BOCES,
Mm-hmm.
that in my mind is not an option. We've had BOCES positions in the past and they've not worked out. It takes, we have no control over hiring. We have no control over who's here. It ends up costing more. I would really be hesitant to go seeking a shared position through BOCES.
There is a movement within BOCES that the word shared is becoming more and more important. More districts want their own business manager. And they're emphasizing that is not yours. That if Leonard Sowers gets sick, he's a BOCES employee, then Julie Holmes is going to come cover for him that day. And the district that Julie Holmes is in now is without somebody present. Doesn't mean that they're not on top of things, but so I don't like option.
I kind of feel very strongly about option two. I think that to me is, it keeps, it's a clear cut, you know, from outside of academia. It's a, you know, the expertise and the perspective, I think, comes from the CPA world. I think it clearly worked well for us. And in my opinion, that's the one I would emphasize over the other two, other three. That's the one I would pick.
With the option two, if with the areas of additional oversight for certain areas, is that something that could get worked into that role?
So just to clarify that, right? So our current position is the business official, but also the treasurer and also an administrator who oversees food service and support staff.
In buildings and grounds.
Buildings and grounds.
Transportation.
Oh, that is
So
right now.
Yes,
Okay.
that's what exists right now.
Okay,
So I don't know if that answers your question.
it does.
but-
I mean, that's,
Okay.
yeah, that's what I was.
Right.
Okay,
So does that,
because I think that's important, because if you were to remove those areas, then that would be that much more that would be on the superintendent.
Yep.
Right, so I mean, that's kind of a co-coverage for the oversight.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
You mind if I throw a few things in here? So our school district is unique. I don't know of another school district in our area, even in the BOCES consortium, that doesn't have a separate treasurer and business manager. So I perform both of those duties. Tupper Lake, I think, does the same thing. Dan is the treasurer as well, but there's also a full-time food service manager over there. There's a full-time buildings and grounds supervisor and a full-time transportation director. We have a full-time transportation director here too, but there's a lot of things that are different in our school district that, and I'm just speaking from experience, that if the person that you're gonna replace me with eventually doesn't have a strong accounting background and be able to do the treasurer's job as well, you're not doing yourself any favor. And I just want everybody to understand that, because it's not an easy job, and it's technical and a lot of rules, regulations. And being able to work with the independent auditors and understand what their needs are and what the school district's needs are, you know, that goes a long way. But again, I'm not trying to, you know, emphasize, you know, that option number two, but I think it's real important. If that's the one you want to go with, that person has got to have a good, strong accounting background. Doesn't have to be a CPA, but it doesn't hurt.
and do you find it, I mean, so option two is the role, is what we have now.
That's what we have
So
now.
do you see that as sustainable, the way it is set up now? Because it's kind of come together around.
If the person has prior supervisory and management skills that from maybe another school district or, worked in,
job.
yeah, different jobs. Because you've got many hats to wear and you've got to supervise and manage
But if they
departments.
had the strong accounting and then the strong, and a background with
Management, supervisory.
management, then
Yeah, I think
it is.
I think it's doable.
I mean, you came in, you were with the prison before.
Yeah.
Was your job with the prison similar to this, or was this a big
Well,
change?
I
for you?
was the CFO, Chief Financial Officer, and the Superintendent of Industries. I wore two hats at that job.
So you were used to wearing multiple.
Yeah,
hats.
and
Okay.
I mean, we had a factory inside the prison, and I was the superintendent of that factory. We had 200 inmates, and the whole, it's much different than the school district. Yeah, there's a lot of supervision. I had 13 staff members in industries, and I had 15 staff on the other financial salaries and expense side. So, but coming from there to here, it was a breath of fresh air.
Okay.
So to speak. So
Can you tell me what the SDL and options, what those initials are?
So SBL is school
business.
building, well, there's school business leader. There's also school building leader, that's principal.
Mhm.
Okay.
They've changed, the titles have changed. And SDL is school district leader, that's what I have for superintendents essentially. So those two essentially, and the SBL being the school business leader, of course, qualify in that other route. I provided you with a document in here to kind of clarify
Yeah.
that because it's pretty complicated, really.
Yeah.
And so one of those documents is here for you to take a look at. It's really two routes. It's either the civil service route or it's the school administrative route.
Okay.
And those are different schools. They're very close, and in some cases, some supersede others. So school district leader tends to, be able to qualifies for the other positions.
So when getting that certification, how much financial training is involved in the coursework that you take?
Well, there is financial training available, and there's it's not the same as a certified public accountant. I don't want to speak to what that is because I'm not that. Leonard can
Right.
speak to what that is because he is that. But there is training that's available, both through the requirements of being a school business leader, and that's taking the right coursework involved in this and that. Plus, additionally, there's additional training that's available through groups like your group, the business officials group, offers accounting classes and other related skill-based training.
And is there a district in the North Country that has gone that route rather than the CPA route?
Oh yeah. Off the top of my head, Malone had
Malone had it.
that.
They don't have it now.
And I don't know something. I don't know.
Malone
if
was
they
the
are.
only. Malone was the only one in our
It was Malone the only one.
consortium. But right now
Saranac
there
Lake
is
did prior to
right.
Dan
Dan Bauer.
Bauer. Yeah.
And Dan's also he's a business administrator too. He's licensed under the SDL.
And so Dan is
Yes,
also.
yeah.
So Saranac
He
Lake
was-
actually
he
has
actually was a
had a
superintendent.
series
Right, I
of
knew he was. I thought so.
series of school
CPA and accounting?
school people.
No,
Dan-
his
Dan.
went the other way, like
Yeah.
he learned that. It's-
And that, there is an advantage to that in that, a person that's gone through the teaching and the administrative really understands.
Right,
how a
the
school
world of the
operates,
custodian, the
yeah.
world of the teacher. Right.
So
Yes.
there is that aspect of going that route.
So with the options, do you, once you choose them, do you end up advertising to different areas?
Well, it's like your other question that was related to this, and you can advertise in ways that cover multiple possibilities. I think you'd have to rule out option one. I don't know I think we'd have to rule out option one to be able to advertise, to take a sort of a concerted effort when the time comes, but still could encompass the possibilities of option 2 and 3. But you couldn't, you know, consider maybe BOCES, maybe that, you know,
Right.
you have to really rule one in or rule it out.
Right.
It does, and is the board comfortable at this point at least in ruling out the BOCES option?
Yeah, I certainly.
Yes.
And if we were, I mean, can you advertise, go in both directions?
Sure,
And advertise in
That's
both directions
not
and then
uncommon.
get
The
the
candidates.
candidate.
Right,
yeah,
and then see who the best
But-
candidates are.
Right.
But obviously, if for option 3, stress the strong accounting, you know, stress that would need
Right.
to be included in it, not.
Here's, there's another thing on the option 3. I know a couple of people out there statewide that I've come to know that are CPAs, and they also have the, you know, the administrative licensing through New York State Ed Department. And that would be, I mean, that would be a good option if you could get somebody like that. But the problem with that up here, I believe, would be the salary, because those people are gonna want, they're not gonna come cheap. So, and I'll just throw this out. I mean, if you can get somebody like that, that to me would be very good, because then they could be the treasurer as well. If they have a license, if they're certified, if they're CPA, and then they have the administrative license, that would be, if you can get them at a decent price, I mean, that would be, to me, the best option.
Yeah,
But-
I'm sorry.
They're just, I mean, I just don't know
Right.
that, I mean, there's people that in our area that are making in that $120,000 range, and they don't have the administrative license, but they have the exact same credentials I do. And they're making over $120,000 a year now.
Right.
So.
One other
just throw it out.
consideration to throw into the mix is, upon BB's retirement, who replaces BB and what's the skill level of that person? So if that person's skill level is, you know, on how we advertised it, which is strong accounting.
Yeah.
Then that might do more than someone whose skill base is much more in the application phase, but will have to learn some of the bookkeeping, accounting skills down the road.
Yeah, and, you know, to throw this all into perspective here, that there's governmental multi-fund accounting, and then there's private industry accounting that most individuals, you know, that come out of the CPA ranks are familiar with. Multi-fund governmental accounting is a whole new, it's different. It's a lot different, and you do learn that in college. But I can tell you this, you know, and you know, I'll go back to 2007 when I started here. The last time I saw this stuff for multi-fund accounting was on the CPA exam, and that was back in the 80s. I'm like, I had to get my textbook out, and honestly, I had to get my textbook out and go back through it and read it just to get myself acquainted with the governmental fund accounting. So,
But the skills transfer,
what's that?
the skills transfer.
Yeah, I mean, it's- I
Roger,
mean,
you throw them in your position.
Yeah, I mean, you can.
Try to make an accountant out of, maybe, I don't know.
I can pass up that opportunity. Right?
It's a different, it's much different than regular, you know, profit-oriented accounting. It's different.
Sounds to me like right now we've successfully ruled out one option and are talking about the possibilities of, you know, pursuing the best candidate depending, and then considering the different rates and.
Right,
And how
but I
that
think
fall.
with Leonard's, you know, emphasis on a strong accounting background, my only concern is how do you vet that? I mean, you know, in an interview process, how do you, somebody can have a resume and say, I have this, but
Yeah, I
until
mean, you gotta dig in, you gotta ask specific questions in
Right.
the interview process, yeah. And I mean, you gotta do some good vouchering, wherever they're coming from, and talk to their people that they work with, right now. Yeah, you're right, it's not, rather, other than having them sit down and take a test in front of you,
Right, well, that's why I said, like, the, you know, the CPA designation says there's a certain level of testing that's already been accomplished, and there's a certain level of competency that you can, you know, you can expect. Now, like you said, public accounting and multi-fund accounting are very,
Right.
very different things, but at least you've been, you know, if they're smart enough to pass the CPA exam, then that tells me something.
Right. I mean, they're CPA firms, I mean, all the big regional firms have a governmental section, and that's all those CPAs do.
Mhm.
That's all they do is work in governmental and multi-fund accounting and do school audits and things like that. They don't get involved in the tax work or the audit work on private companies. They don't get involved in that, so they just focus on multi-fund and government accounting. So, I mean, there's a whole set of rules for government accounting. It's the GASB, the Government Accounting Standards Board, rather than the generally accepted accounting principles, the GAAP on the private industry side. So,
So if you're okay, we can move on to the last one. And I think the superintendent position, I think the questions are a little clearer maybe than, maybe even simpler, I'd like to think, than the other two. Because really it's more about a search than it is about a position. You kind of know what a superintendent, the job description of superintendent is, and you know it's one position, not two or 1.5 or anything like that. So the questions that really I outlined here more had to do with when the time arises, what kind of search, and I think the question here is, you know, is the search going to take advantage of the free BOCES service, go with the outside consultant, or stick to an in-house search the way we did, for example, our principals. And then maybe the other discussion, which maybe we have now, or maybe the board has at another time, has to do with are the best candidates for this district, for Lake Placid Central School District, somebody from, we'll just say, somebody from the outside, external candidate, somebody that is coming from another district that would be brand new to Lake Placid, or more of a familiar face, familiar person with roots or connections to the district. And I think I bring that up because I think that's those qualities have been, you know, discussed and debated here before. So just wondering what your thoughts are with that in terms of the search or the kind of candidate that you might be looking at.
I'd like to see a search start. BOCES is free, so what the heck?
We've tried to provide you with just examples of what those look like. So if you took a look at that, Karen posted those on, just give it that.
And then a search, you know, like we did for the principals. I mean, during the principal search and looking at a lot of those, we lost at least 2 that I remember to superintendent jobs. So they were qualified, but they were looking for different positions. So they're out there. I try to stay away from consultants, but that's my.
Yeah, it's expensive and they don't really
Rule out
know.
one again.
Yeah, and they don't really understand.
Look how good we are at this.
Yeah, get rid of one.
I do like the brochures and things that are in there. It'd be nice to make up when the time comes.
Isn't it, I mean, I'll ask you this, but isn't superintendent's positions right now in New York State quite competitive? It seems like there's a lot of searching going on all the time.
There's a constant search, there's constant openings.
Yeah.
Turnover is pretty rapid.
Yeah.
You know, statewide. There's also a lot of superintendents in the state, so you see 20, 30 openings, that's out of 700 school districts.
Mhm.
But 20, 30 is still a pretty large number. But every one of those positions is competitive.
Yeah.
Yeah, rarely is it, I follow the searches in general, and I know that some, you know, get to the finalist stage and then they reject all the candidates. And so in those cases, maybe they're looking for a different kind of candidate. But in most cases, you know, they're getting capable candidates and finding one that, you know, works for the district. So.
Well, the reason I ask is I know with the principal search that we did, one of the questions that the candidate we hired asked was, you know, what am I getting into? You know, this is I'm also buying into this community, and that's a really good question, you know, and that's something I think we have to go outside the district to you know, to look, but that's something I think that, you know, That's to me is the difficult part, you know, do they fit? And do they think they fit?
Right, and it seems like, certainly I can think of an example where the candidate came and didn't really fit. But I also can think of, I think probably the most common reason for there not being successors is, or not taking the position is when they discover the cost of housing.
Yeah.
That, I can remember different searches where our top three candidates actually ended up turning it down because of they couldn't afford a house.
Right.
You probably should have bought that house.
Yeah.
You still own to?
They wouldn't even need a car.
The one at the elementary school you're talking about.
No,
Yeah,
well, that
well,
wasn't
yeah,
the one
yeah.
here.
And the one at the elementary.
And I think that came up then, and I think
They
that's
could
the
ride the
reality they were
crossover.
pointing out. So I do think that this is why I think it's really important to think about whether you might, whether the district might want to look at external candidates or not, because I think with external candidates, I think you really have to assume that the salary and the benefits, especially the moving expenses, and possibly the living stipend that we put into that first document a couple of years ago when we started talking about succession planning, would have to be considerations in order to overcome that. Because otherwise, you're really shooting yourself in the foot, aren't you?
Yes,
So-
unless you get somebody that's independently wealthy, and that doesn't usually happen. So.
I think you're totally going outside. You may be advertising outside, but if, Charles Schultz, who teaches history, has the qualifications and wants to apply, then great.
Sure. And I guess my point is that, generally you advertise, and I think, again, we provide you some examples so you could see this, some kind of salary range, some kind of benefits that are clear. These things come, how often do I get these things? What? Once every couple of weeks? We
Do
get
you
this
give
kind
them
of
to
thing?
him?
Oh, we have fun with them.
We have fun with them too. We do. We have lots of fun with them. It's a joke now.
We do, it's
Well,
a-
Sure.
But if you,
We're not the mailman.
if you were thinking, in other words, if you were thinking external, then you would have to start with those assumptions that your salary range would have to be, again, my opinion, high enough, and that the benefits, to include those other pieces, would have to be stated pretty clearly as a part of that. So I think you'd have to make those considerations in advance.
Be transparent to what you're offering.
Yeah.
There's just two I still read the newspaper. I'm in the minority.
There's two right now, yeah.
There's
One
two
came
there right
out
now,
Friday.
it's right today.
All over the place. And then one opens up and then that gets filled by somebody who left the last district.
Yeah.
And that one opens up. It's,
Chairs.
It's all fine till the music stops.
I kind of agree with Rick in terms of the BOCES search services.
the BOCES search service is not, it's not the same as having, say, a BOCES shared business manager.
Right.
The BOCES district superintendent search service is really about that person, here it's Steve Schaefer right now, working with the school board to provide that kind of advertising, resources to put out the brochures, to organize the interviews.
Right.
But I think an active school board can shape that search just as much as if they do it themselves, except doing it yourself is a lot more work.
And regionally, either then district's happy with that
Yes.
service. This, and we should keep this Barker Central School District brochure. It's a great,
Oh, I go ahead and remember which ones we put out there. Which one?
this one, the first one, it's really, I think it's great. I mean, it's got too much in it.
There's a lot here.
Yeah, it's got too much, but it just, compared to the other ones, it just seems like it really presents,
Pictures
They're-
are great.
presenting themselves very positively.
So how do people feel about the benefits, or is it too early, the relocation benefits? And is it too early to really make that determination?
I'm not ready to talk about that. I don't think. But if you want to.
But I think it's something we need to.
It's something we obviously have to take position. It's, you know, who's looking at the ads that are out there, we're clearly not in the same range, so.
That's why on a brochure, we have to put how beautiful it is.
Well, yeah, no, I think that's true. This is a destination resort. I mean,
Yeah.
so there is a compelling reason. I talked to a guy this weekend, he's a teacher, he applied for the principal position, out of Buffalo. He said, you didn't want me, so I probably read your resume, but I don't remember the name. But, you know, there are people who do want to move here. I mean, you know, and they are in education and, you know, it's just a matter
But they
of.
also want a house and.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's
That's the
the
problem.
issue, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, they come
Yeah,
up
he was
here.
staying at the Wilderness because he couldn't afford to stay in town, so,
Yeah.
yeah, that's exactly right.
Okay.
So, okay.
So, and that's fine. I think it's important that we're, you know, the board's thinking about these things and talking about it. I don't get to have all the answers right now.
Right.
But certainly giving us some ideas about, you know, where the ball would start rolling and, you know, where to go from there.
Well, thank you for putting these
Yeah,
options
thank you.
together.
And it
That
can
was
be
very-
done it can, like, you can utilize the BOCES search while also doing your own.
You'd still, you know, it would be people in Lake Placid interviewing and making judgments and, you know, inviting back finalists, guided by the district superintendent who would know how to work that process,
So they would be acting as the consultants.
Yeah.
Yes,
essentially.
so for free.
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense.
Okay, well, thanks, everybody.
Thank you, thank you.
Really, really good.
Right. We'll get back to the agenda now, and so we'll skip over for the good of the cause. Do you want to just, since nobody's here, do you want to just leave the tables like this?
Yeah, I don't.
That's all right. We'll go down to reports from the board, so we have the, what,
So it's like a little bit of the end anyway.
yeah, budget status report. Leonard?
Okay. So this is the budget status report for the month ending December 31st, 2017. Our property tax year-to-date revenue is $14,825,892. Other tax items is $14,168. Our charges for services are $21,290. Use of money is $5,045. Miscellaneous revenue is $44,713. State and federal aid, this is all state aid, by the way, is $1,263,960. For a total revenue year-to-date through December of $16,175,068. Looking at it from last year compared to this year, you know, it's basically the same, just a little bit shy of where we were last year on the actual collection of revenue. That unearned balance that you're looking at there in the property tax, that's our star aid, and that will, our star revenue from the tax revenue. So that did come in January, so you'll see that reported next month.
We didn't have any challenges this year, did we? Or whatever they call them, property tax.
Tax surcharge or tax, well, we do occasionally, it's March is usually when we get hit with those, so I'm sure we'll have a few.
It's like grievances, is that what we're at?
Yeah. Any other questions on the revenue side? On the expenditure side, the salaries through December were $3,555,211. Employee benefits, $3,191,123. Our contractual and BOCES expenses were $1,149,829. Materials and supplies, $221,515. Equipment expense, $26,405. Debt service, $100,533. That's the interest that we paid in December for our bond interest. And textbook expenses through the December were $12,171. Looking at last year compared to this year, we're 44.10% on the expense side, just a hair higher than we were last year at this time. Any questions on the expenditure side? Okay.
Thank you. And then the treasurer's report, are there any questions about the treasurer's report? So we'll move on to the superintendent's report.
Okay, so I want to talk about two things. One is what's going on in Albany with state aid, and the other is what's going on here in Northwest. So starting with Albany, since our last board meeting, we've heard from the governor twice. On January 3rd, he did a state of the state in which he really outlines ideas and policies that he's going to promote, including education. And then today, this afternoon, as a matter of fact, he presented his budget, which is the dollar signs attached to those ideas. What happened, right? Well, I'll start with today. In today's budget, the governor proposed a $769 million increase in aid to education, 3% increase over last year. Now that number is possibly larger than some people may have anticipated based on some of the worries that were being expressed, again, in Albany. But it's also much smaller than what was being recommended by our two educational groups that make recommendations like this. The Board of Regents $1.6 billion recommendation, and the Educational Conference Board $2 billion recommendation. So it's much lower than that. As you probably remember, every year the governor comes in with a certain number, the legislature debates it, and the numbers sometimes go up. Last year, not so much, and later than we could really make use of. But some years more substantially. This is an election year. Whether or not that makes a difference remains to be seen. But he's recommending $769 million. 70% of that increase is going to the poorest districts through somewhat much of that through foundation aid. And you might remember from the past that when foundation aid goes up, our increases are either small or zero. We did get a tentative state aid run this afternoon, very small increase, 0.2% increase in foundation aid recommended by the government. In addition, he's recommending additional amounts, relatively small amounts, for pre-K, after-school programs, community schools, STEM programs, charter schools, and for phase 2 of the Excelsior Scholarship as they are more inclusive next year, and some child care funding increases. So that was the budget address. Interestingly, the much longer State of the State address dedicated very little time to public education, even though public education is the largest budget item. It was really, a minute or so. There were some pieces included in the written document, and so when people dug a little deeper, they found a little bit more. That included, some of the items I've already mentioned, like STEM, early college, high schools. Also had some discussion about school meal policies, including an end to lunch shaming, which I believe we already made changes in our policies for that. And an end to alternative meals, incentives to buy local foods. This all came out in his written document. Increased support for AP fees and for master teachers, which we did not see in the budget today, at least. Again, this was a brief address. It wasn't the nitty-gritty details. So this may come out again. One of the things that did come out is, that the governor really spoke about he was very critical of high local property taxes and how that interrelated with the threats from the federal government's actions on taxes. Spent a lot of time talking about state income tax and a shift, which would be substantive or significant to a payroll tax for income tax. But then he also spoke about the challenge with having property taxes high and the SALT deduction eliminated, And so that's on the radar, and I didn't really see much about how that's going to impact us, but it's on the radar, and so we'll see down the road. In terms of property taxes, maybe this is a little bit less focused on what the governor said today, but we did receive word on the CPI from last year, and this is the CPI that we use when we're calculating our property tax cap. And the CPI came in at over 2%, 2.13%. And that means that we calculate the property tax cap at 2%. We're not able to use any more than that. So whenever we're doing that, we already know it's going to come in somewhere in the middle 2%. So we believe our property tax cap number will be somewhere, we don't really know yet, somewhere between 2.
It's going to be about 2%,
2.7.
probably in that 2.3 to 2.7, somewhere in that range.
So then we're going to see a higher tax cap than we had last year, and we're potentially, we don't really know, but we're probably going to see a little bit lower state aid increase than we had last year. And that's where things seem to be unfolding as we head towards our budget workshop, which I think is next week.
Yeah.
So that's what I have on the Albany piece. In terms of here in Lake Placid, we have lots of good things going on, as we tend to have. This week there's lots of sports action. The thing about having weather problems is that contests are invariably canceled, postponed, delayed, and so a lot of them are being rescheduled. We seem to be having a lot of contests right now. Tonight, boys basketball and hockey. And then of course hockey and basketball tomorrow, and then more basketball, more hockey, and then skiing kicks into gear as well. So athletics are going at full speed. We also continue to move forward with the building project, and our architects will be coming for another planning session on Friday. So that's always good news. We have our Science Olympiad team will be is gearing up for Yale, right? Yale, not this weekend, but next week. And then this Friday, there's a middle school winter party, which should be a lot of fun if any of you are looking for a good time. There'll be a DJ, dancing, and a cakewalk. Those proceeds will go to support the after prom party. In terms of next week, we have a board policy committee meeting on Monday night. That's a reschedule. Lake Placid Elementary School will kick off Kindness Week next week. Now this is something which is nationwide that we participate in the second year. The Great Kindness Challenge is what's called nationwide. It starts next week at Lake Placid Elementary School. Deanna Brown, our counselor, will be working with 5th grade students to coordinate school-wide activities like daily announcements and a poster contest. And they're asking teachers to incorporate a focus on kindness into classrooms next week as well. So that's always, I look forward to seeing what they come up with there. It's also Regents Week next week, and next Friday, a week from this Friday, marks the end of the semester. And before our next week, we have a budget work session next week, but before our next formal board meeting, it's 3 weeks from today. And among other things that will be happening between now and then, auditions for the school musical. This year it's going to be The Boyfriend, and Winter Carnival, which takes place at the weekend before our next board meeting. Something exciting this year for Winter Carnival. This is the 75th anniversary, and we have had volunteers contacting former kings and queens now for a while, and we have over 50 former kings and queens, including, I believe, and I guess we'll have to wait to see, the first Winter Carnival queen.
Wow.
Who will be here as honored guests. So it's going to be quite the show.
Yeah. Still be in the gym. I think on the 50th they had it over in the arena.
There'll also be the Empire State Games weekend too.
Oh,
Yeah.
Definitely.
Get here early if you want parking space. So that's it, everything. Do you have any questions or comments? Thanks.
No, thank you. Information for the board, there were two things, the NISBA membership letter, we have our official little tag that we'll put up on the plaque over there. And then the Area 6, just a reminder, the Area 6 legislative breakfast, February 2nd, 8
I
to
think Rick
10:30.
was the only one that told me you wanted to go.
I'll go.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I'll go too.
Want to carpool?
Sure.
Yeah.
We'll take my truck.
Can I ride in the
Wheelchair?
back?
Patty took your number.
You got a
Yeah, I
rocker.
just, I can't, I was trying to get out of work, I can't, so. But I would go, I always have to go to the ends of the evening.
And then Lincoln goes with agenda items. Our work session, this session, the succession planning was be leadership. The board member attendance at the legislative breakfast would be, should go along with one of our goals, leadership in terms of attending educational things. Any others? No?
Oh, I wonder, sorry, I have to look at, one second, I just have to see what the.
I guess while Patty's looking, the
Finance, the corrective action probably should go under finance.
finance, okay. And then also the board member attendance at the conference, the advocacy conference, that would be another one.
Did you already mention the succession planning
Yeah.
and leadership? Okay.
Yeah, do that first. All right, so we go down to action items. I guess we go to the personnel items, the civil service employee appointment. The recommended action reads, upon recommendation of superintendent, appoint David Corson, 10-month bus driver, 25 hours, replacing Frank Kester at the bus garage for a probationary period of 60 days commencing January 17, 2018, and terminating on March 19, 2018. The rate of pay will be $17.79 per hour. Is there a motion to approve this appointment?
Yes.
Thank you, Jeff. Is there a second? Thanks, Rick. Is there discussion, questions? If not, are we going to just vote, voice vote? Nope, here it goes.
Can do both.
You can- We're gonna have to call it out.
Right, right. It's 5 yes.
Okay, 4-0 against. Did the teaching staff maternity leave and the long-term substitute extension, teaching staff retirement. Upon recommendation of the superintendent, accept the retirement of Don Moody, physical education teacher and athletic director for middle and high school, effective June 30th, 2018. Is there a motion to approve this retirement?
Yes.
Is there a second?
Yes.
Thanks, Jeff. With somebody that's been here as long as Donna has had and has been here and has had such a positive impact, I always feel like this is kind of bittersweet. It seems like we should spend a little more time on it than just voting yay or nay. But I remember when Donna came here, I was actually coaching volleyball, and she came along and we coached volleyball together. And from then on, she kind of took over the volleyball, and I actually took off and started officiating volleyball as a result. But I mean, she's really dedicated herself to this school system.
We can show her like her.
Yeah, we are very fortunate. I mean, and her letter of her retirement letter said
So
it
we
all.
were really missing her to also be teaching the students how to write letters. 'Cause
Yeah.
This is beautiful.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
we should have been utilizing
So-
that
I told her I was gonna have everybody vote now.
career.
Yeah. What would happen if we put
That was always her was quite, she went to, maternity leave.
Yeah. Nope, can't have a baby. Well, anyway.
You think about the influence of a phys ed teacher. Donna's been here 30 years.
Yeah.
And she's taught every kid, at least grade 7 through 12, every kid every year. So you're talking about for at least 5 years in a row, having students year in, year out. And then you add to that the athletic programs that she's, coached and overseen. The contact and the influence on our children here, and how lucky they are that she was the
She
person.
was the person. So I guess communicate our congratulations to her, but our regret also to see her go. And with that, would you please cast your votes? Oops,
Sorry, Jen.
That's okay.
mine came up in error too, do I?
I have a change vote up here. Do that.
I just want me to mark the yes for you again.
Yeah, just mark it.
Okay.
Did mine come
That's
up?
fine, yep.
Okay, 5-4-0 against. Other action, we did the bond resolution. On recommendation of the superintendent, approve the bond resolution as per the attached. Is there a motion to approve this resolution?
Oh,
Thanks, Rick. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thanks, Jim. Is there discussion, questions? No, let's please vote.
Fine, yes.
Thanks. 5-4-0 against. And then the corrective action plan. The proposed resolution reads, whereas Lake Placid Central Schools audit dated June 30th, 2017 had a schedule of findings regarding the district's unassigned fund balance. Whereas the school must file a corrective action plan with the State of New York Education Department of Audit Services. Now therefore accept the attached corrective action plan regarding the district's unassigned fund balance as per the attached. Is there a motion to approve this resolution?
I'll make the motion.
Thanks, Jim. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Rick. Is there a
Jeff.
second? Jeff, yeah, I wrote Jeff, I wrote Red, yeah. Sorry.
Whoever you are.
Yeah. Any questions, discussion?
Okay.
Please vote.
5-4.
That's 4-0 against special education we did. Are there any questions concerning the February 6th packet? Okay, then there is a proposed executive session on here. It concerned the attendance history of a board member. A board member, Linda, has decided that given her life at this point that she needs to resign. So I don't think we need to go into executive session, but we do need to discuss how we want to proceed with filling this vacancy. If we want to discuss that tonight, or if we want to wait and discuss it at the next meeting. I can go through what we've done in the past when we've had a vacancy. In the past, it was Jeff. We actually advertised it. We had a couple people express an interest. We asked them to come in and we interviewed them, and then we made the decision. We want to proceed that way, or if we want to try
Seem to
something
be
different.
effective. I don't see why not.
Okay, so we should get Linda's letter of resignation soon. We can approve that at the next meeting, but in the meantime, we can start advertising.
And can we send it out to the,
Just thinking
The
same
email
thing.
list?
Yeah, the new email list, yeah.
yeah?
Yep.
And
I haven't gotten the responses done yet, but they're in the works. They should be done soon. But I'm not gonna send them out till everybody has a chance to see them. So I'll be sending them out to you all before.
Well, we could do that, because it would be really
Yeah.
great to get somebody on to, for, obviously we'll have the first budget meeting, but earlier than later, so that they
Right.
can participate in budget. You wouldn't want them to miss out on that.
No.
Trial by fire.
Alright.
And we'll put in a strong CPA background in our advertisement for the board member.
I like it. All right, we'll move into adjournment. The next meeting dates, we have January 23rd, is the budget work session. I didn't write down what time that starts. What time, is that 6:30 still? Okay, 6:30 here in Lake Placid. Right now, we have February 6th, 6 to 7 set up as a budget work session in Wilmington. That will depend really on what we find out at the budget work session. If that needs to be separated out, then we'll have to, we'll know more January 23rd. We can decide if that's the way we want to proceed. We do have a board meeting in Wilmington, February 6th. Right now, that's scheduled to start immediately after the work session at 7 o'clock. Old agenda topics, the one that's on there now, it still is the formation committee to review CSEA typist job descriptions. And that's, do we have CSEA representation?
No, I haven't heard anything.
Okay,
I just saw her yesterday, she had asked.
I'll call it.
And I can, I don't
You're
know if I
going
have her
to-
email or not. Yeah, let me, I'll
Okay,
I'll
all
put
right.
it down to get a hold of her.
Okay.
I'll leave a note on her car. Wherever it is.
So if you share a contact, you can text her.
I have her
You
email.
can call her the school cruiser, it's 10007 and it's so cool.
That's how I remember it.
It's so cool that she got that, and I know she's been able to somehow.
Thank you. I'll do that.
See, just to be able to dial that, just be worth calling out.
4017.
Oh. I think I-
That's
New-
all right. You
New
call
agenda
it.
topics. That makes her even better than James Bond. New agenda topics.
No, should we put something about but looking for a board member, should we maybe
As a
have
new
that be
agenda
part of
topic?
our, yeah.
Okay. All right, if not, is there a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Sure, thanks, Patty. Everybody?
You'll have to take a vote now.
Who wants to be the second?
I'll second.
All right, Joe.
There you go.
All right, I'm assuming it's all in favor. And it's 8 o'clock. Nice.
And the assessment on the study.
I was pretty slick,
Yeah.
Hunter, look at you.
6 a.m. tomorrow?
Oh, that was our, we don't need that leveler
Um,
now.
and I would actually like
That is
to
so strange,
do the
Board
next
must be
Must be.
different here.
Must be a little.
Yeah.
Did it hear anything?
Yeah.
That was strange. Sorry,
Are we-
because
are we
I'm
ready?
ready. Because of
Are we